Greetings everyone and welcome to episode 7 of the Virtual Office Hours, our fall 2016 edition. We are discussing my course on the American Revolution and going over some primary sources and documents about the American Revolution. We have made it up to roughly 1774, 1775. So we're going to be talking about a document in that period, especially in the wake of the coercive acts here in a few minutes. As always, Abby Blakeney, our producer, is here. Today we just have one founding father, Thomas Jefferson, because we're actually going to be talking about a document written by Thomas Jefferson. To set the stage, we have just gotten through the Boston Tea Party and the coercive acts and the reaction to the coercive acts. If you remember last episode, we talked about Gouverneur Morris's fear of the mob and of democratic government. But for class yesterday, we actually looked at a summary view of the rights of British America by Thomas Jefferson. And here Thomas Jefferson, who's relatively an unknown figure in colonial America at this point, he still does not have the kind of fame he would get once he joins the Second Continental Congress and of course writes the Declaration of Independence. But nevertheless, he is an important figure in the House of Burgesses in Virginia. He's an important Virginia politician. And one of the things we stressed in class are all of the goings-on in Boston. The coercive acts, the intolerable acts are geared towards Boston. And then really the rest of the story, or the next part of the story, are the various other colonies responding to what's happening in Boston with the coercive acts, and you know, the idea of that, you know, we're somehow going to join them in this revolutionary cause. So Jefferson's summary view of the rights of British America is really the first kind of serious statement from Virginia that they're going to back the people of Boston in this resistance to the coercive acts. And if you read this document, you will see Jefferson making reference to all of those coercive acts: the Massachusetts Government Act, the Boston Port Act, the Justice Act, the Quartering Acts. You can see very specifically how he's directing his appeal to show that the British government, by passing these acts, is taking away historic British liberties from the people. He makes a historical argument in this text, shows the history of British liberty, talks about the English Constitution and how the coercive acts are violating the English Constitution. And then we spent a little time on a really interesting phrase that he makes in the middle of the document. And he says this. He's talking about the taxation the coercive acts and their effect on Boston. And then he says, yet all were involved in one indiscriminate ruin, meaning the people of Boston. And this ruin came, he says, by a new executive power, unheard of till then, that of a British Parliament. Now, this is a fascinating statement because, of course, anyone living in the 1770s in the British colonies would know Parliament. So the Parliament is not he couldn't mean that, you know, this is an unheard, Parliament itself is an unheard of thing, right? But what is new or unheard of here? And I think what Jefferson is getting at is the idea that Parliament is acting in a tyrannical way, or a powerful way. These are all power, tyranny. These are all words that come out of a sort of Whig vocabulary that Thomas Jefferson is using. And he's trying to suggest here that Parliament, the legislative body that is meant to defend the individual rights of British subjects, to defend the English Constitution when it comes to those natural rights, that somehow Parliament is now acting tyrannical. And in some ways, for many, that would be a sort of contradiction of terms to consider Parliament as a tyrannical force, because usually in the balanced system of British government is the monarch that's the powerful force that's wanting to take away liberty. So again, Jefferson says that this is a new kind of power. It's unheard of. The British Parliament, of all groups, of all institutions, is actually taking away our rights and our liberties. Jefferson is not the first to make this argument. Actually, James Otis, another Bostonian, or I should say a Bostonian, made this argument back during the Stamp Act crisis as well. When you tax without representation, the very body that's supposed to secure liberties is now acting in a tyrannical way. This great irony that exists here. So this is at the heart of Jefferson's argument, to show that Parliament is being tyrannical. And then just to close, we're filming this in October. What is it, Abby? October 13th or 12th? 12th. We're coming up on a presidential election. So I love the way Jefferson sort of closes this out when he says, "The principles of right and wrong are legible to every reader. To pursue them requires not the aid of many counselors. The whole art of government consists in the art of being honest." See you next time on the Virtual Office Hours.